The lake had always been mine. When I was a boy, my grandfather would take me out at dawn in his old aluminum rowboat, the mist curling over the water like ghosts reluctant to leave. He'd tell me the stories of how our family carved this land out of nothing, how his father dammed the creek with his bare hands, hauling rocks and logs until a reservoir swelled where there had once been only marsh. That dam fed the land, gave us water for crops, and left us with a wide, mirror-like lake that had belonged to us for generations. It wasn't just land. It was legacy. By the time I turned 45, the farm was the last piece of my family's name still standing. My parents were gone, my brother had moved to the city, and it was just me and my daughter, Claire, trying to make ends meet on the old homestead. The lake was our crown jewel, the heart of everything. And sitting at the far end of it, hidden in the trees, was the old dam my grandfather had built, weathered, but still strong as stone. Then the bulldozers came. At first, I thought it was just road work, some county project I hadn't heard about. But when the surveyors showed up, when the land markers popped up like weeds across my lower pasture, I realized something was wrong. Very wrong. That's when I met them. The Homeowners Association of Willow Creek Estates. Clean-shaven men in pressed suits, women with clipboards and sunglasses, all talking fast and smiling wide. They told me they were improving the neighborhood, adding value, beautifying the area. But what they were really doing was cutting into my land, paving over it, and pouring concrete foundations for houses that didn't belong. I went to the county office, papers in hand. This land has been in my family for over a century, I told them. You can't just hand it over. But they had documents too. Shiny, stamped ones with signatures and zoning codes I'd never seen before. They swore it was legal, that I'd missed the notice when the land was reclassified. They laughed when I told them about my grandfather's dam, the lake, the water rights. You'll adjust, one of them said. Progress always wins. Progress. That's what they called it. Within 6 months, 26 homes sprouted on the edge of my lake like tumors. Cookie-cutter houses painted in pastels, all with trimmed hedges, concrete driveways, and bright American flags hanging from porches. The HOA patrolled them like hawks, sending out violation notices for improper lawn height or unauthorized paint colors. And every morning, I'd watch their sprinklers sip from my lake as their kids screamed on trampolines where my pasture used to be. They didn't ask. They didn't care. They just took. But they forgot one thing. The lake wasn't natural. It was held there by my grandfather's dam, and I was the only one who knew how to open it. The first real fight came the day they sent me a violation notice. A violation notice. For my own land. The paper, printed on heavy cream stock with the Willow Creek HOA logo at the top, claimed my barn was an eyesore, that my tractor was abandoned machinery, and that my fencing didn't meet community standards. If I didn't comply within 30 days, they said, fines would accrue at $200 a day. I laughed at first. Then I realized they weren't joking. I drove my old Ford pickup right into their brand new cul-de-sac and banged on the HOA president's door. His name was Richard Mallory, slick hair, polo shirt, a man who smelled like money and arrogance. He opened the door with a smirk. Can I help you? You can start, I said, waving the notice in his face, by explaining why you think you have the right to fine me for buildings that were here before your cookie-cutter neighborhood even existed. Richard didn't flinch. He looked me dead in the eye, calm as stone. Because you're part of this community now, he said, and you'll abide by our rules. That's how it works. I didn't agree to be part of your community. I snapped. This is my land. Always has been. Not anymore. He gave me that same little smirk, the kind men wear when they think they're untouchable. Maybe you should have read the fine print. I wanted to knock him off his porch right then and there, but I didn't. I went home, seething. The fines started piling up, letters in the mail, threats of liens, lawyers calling me at dinner time. Claire tried to calm me down, said we could fight it in court. But courts cost money, and I didn't have the kind of money Richard Mallory had. Then the harassment started. One night, I found beer bottles smashed against my barn. Another time, someone spray-painted white trash across my fence. When I called the sheriff, he shrugged. Probably just kids, he said. You can't prove it was the HOA. But I knew. I saw the way they looked at me when I drove past. Those neighbors in their pastel houses with their perfect lawns. Like I was dirt. Like I didn't belong. Weeks turned into months. The fines grew into the tens of thousands. They even tried to block me from using the lake, claiming it was a shared resource. That was the final straw. One evening, as the sun burned low and gold over the water, I walked to the dam. The old wooden gate creaked under my hand. I hadn't touched it in years, but I still remembered the lessons my grandfather taught me. How the pressure built up behind it. How one twist could change everything. I stared at the neat rows of houses reflecting in my lake, their lights flickering on one by one. They thought they'd beaten me. They thought progress had won. But they had no idea what they were standing on. No idea what I could unleash. The night I made the decision, the sky was heavy with rain. Thunder rolled across the valley, shaking the windows of my farmhouse. Claire was asleep upstairs, her textbooks spread across the bed. She was 17, on the cusp of college, and the only reason I hadn't burned the HOA to the ground already. I kept telling myself, hold steady, do it for her. But that night, something in me snapped. Another letter had arrived, this one stamped final warning. They were putting a lien on my farm. If I didn't pay up, they'd seize it. Everything my family had built for over 100 years would be signed away to men in suits and pastel houses. That's when I drove to the dam. The rain slicked my jacket, soaked through my boots, but I didn't care. The wooden gate loomed in the dark, creaking with the force of water pressing behind it. The lake was swollen from weeks of storms, higher than I'd ever seen it. Nature itself was on my side. I put my hand on the rusted wheel, my grandfather's voice echoing in my head. Never forget, boy. This lake gives life, but it can take it away just as quick. I twisted. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a groan like some ancient beast waking from sleep, the gate shuddered. Water hissed through the cracks. Then it roared. The sound was deafening. The lake ripping free, rushing like a freight train down toward Willow Creek Estates. From the hilltop, I watched it unfold like a movie. The first wave hit the backyards, swallowing trampolines, fences, and playsets in seconds. Lights flickered in the houses as families ran to their porches, screaming. Cars bobbed like toys in driveways. The water climbed higher, smashing through sliding glass doors, tearing drywall apart like tissue. And in the middle of it all, I saw Richard Mallory. He was standing on his porch in his pressed khakis, shouting orders, waving his arms as if he could stop the flood by sheer authority. But when the water rose to his waist, I saw the panic in his eyes. He scrambled for higher ground, his voice breaking. The dam didn't care who he was. None of them mattered to the flood. I felt no joy, no triumph. Just a cold, hard stillness in my chest as I watched 26 houses sink beneath the weight of my grandfather's lake. Generators exploded in sparks. A dog barked until the water silenced it. Mothers clutched children to their chests as they scrambled to rooftops. It was chaos. Pure, unstoppable chaos. By dawn, the rain had eased. The lake had drained halfway, and where Willow Creek Estates once stood, there was nothing but ruin. Houses broken, streets buried in mud, silence broken only by the distant wail of sirens. I had done it. I had taken back what was mine. But as I stood there, soaked and shaking, I knew something else too. There would be no going back. The morning after felt unreal. Helicopters thudded overhead, circling the wreckage like vultures. News vans lined the county road, their cameras pointed at what used to be Willow Creek Estates. Reporters called it the Great Flood of Maple Valley. Neighbors who'd once looked down their noses at me now huddled on rooftops, wrapped in Red Cross blankets, their eyes hollow with shock. And me? I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching it all like a man watching his own funeral. They'd come for me soon. I knew that. Claire came down the stairs, her face pale. She'd seen the news on her phone before she even looked outside. Dad, did you? Her voice trailed off, but she didn't need to finish. I didn't lie. I couldn't. I opened it, I said quietly. Her eyes filled with tears, not anger, not even fear. Just sorrow. They're saying people could have died. I didn't want it to come to this, I whispered. But they were taking everything from us. Everything your granddad built. I couldn't let them win. She turned away, hugging herself, as if my words only made the weight heavier. By noon, the sheriff's deputies were at my gate. Not strangers this time. Men I'd known for years. Men who'd hunted deer with me, shared beers at the county fair. They wouldn't meet my eyes as they put the cuffs on my wrists. Sam, the sheriff said, his voice low, you're looking at charges that'll stick. Reckless endangerment. Destruction of property. Maybe worse. I nodded. I wasn't about to fight. As they led me past the cameras, I heard the questions shouted from the reporters. Do you regret it? Was this revenge? Do you feel responsible for destroying people's homes? I said nothing, but inside, my mind was a storm. Did I regret it? Maybe. Maybe not. I knew the HOA had stolen from me, trampled my rights, laughed in my face. But I also knew kids had lost their bedrooms, families their photo albums, dogs their homes. Progress might have been cruel, but my vengeance was crueler still. In the holding cell that night, I stared at the ceiling and thought of my grandfather. I wondered what he'd say if he could see me now, his grandson, chained and facing prison. Would he call me a fool? Or would he say I'd finally reminded the world that our land wasn't theirs to take? I didn't know. All I knew was that the lake was empty now, drained and scarred. And with it, so was I. Claire came to visit the next morning. She pressed her hand to the glass between us. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. They can lock you up, she said, but they can't erase what they did. And they can't erase who you are. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something. Maybe hope. Maybe just the stubborn pride of a man who refused to be erased. Whatever came next, prison or not, one truth remained. The land remembered. And so did I.